Hi, I'm Tracy Van Brockel with AT&T, and AT&T is a very grateful recipient of NOFO 1 T&E Award, as well as founding member of the ORAN Alliance and a key contributor. So my first question, maybe this will be my only one, how long is the line, is we're kind of struggling with how do we demonstrate compliance with 3GPP and ORAN specifications, ORAN Alliance specifications that are still evolving, which is a nice way of saying they're not complete. Is it reasonable to say we'll be consistent with what's there now and propose how we'll influence the next iteration of, let's say, ORAN Alliance specification, whatever, working group 4 or whatever? And we're obviously AT&T and our partner Verizon with our NOFO 1 award are very involved with 3GPP as well. Is that permissible, or you really can't be compliant with some of the ORAN specifications upon which we're dependent to succeed with NOFO 3?
Yeah, so the answer to your question is yes, right? Look, we firmly acknowledge, right, that not all standards are fully baked and matured and ready for prime time, right? We understand that. Now, that having been said, right, you are required to be compliant with the specifications as they exist today, right? But to do the types of things you're talking about, which is say, yes, we are compliant, but we are moving in this direction as part of this working group and so on and so forth, that would be perfectly acceptable.
Okay, great. And well, only one other question is, what hardware software satisfies your definition for RAN supplier? I'm assuming it could be any, well, not everything in an open 5G Next G system, but not just a radio, not just a specific, RUDU type thing.
Yes,
it would include
I think
it might include.
Yeah, are you referencing the first SRFA here or the second?
I primarily the first one, but the second one as well, because that one emphasizes multi-vendor interoperability, whereas the first one doesn't. That's
right. Yeah. So, I mean, at the end of the day, right, you can't have one without the other, right? There's not a radio on the marketplace today that will work without an associated baseband, right? That is just a requirement. So, in a minimum, right, you are going to need to have established, so let's take SRFA2, right? Established interconnectivity between an RU and a CUDU complex from two different vendor sets, okay, right? And then, of course, we would continue to see a variety of vendors, right, as we move a little bit deeper into the mothership, right? And you get into the core network and the different functions and the virtualization of those functions and those types of things that make it easy for multiple vendors to participate. Okay, sounds reasonable. Thank you very much. Sure.
Hi, I'm Mitch Coker from a small company, Vistology. My question is probably somewhat different from other questions, but let me try. So my understanding of this whole program is that SRFA2 eventually will support real things, right? So it's kind of just research, which will eventually transfer to applications. And SRFA2 is somewhat different because you're stressing here automation and adaptation, right? Okay, so for us, SRFA1, you refer to ORAN and 3GPP, all kinds of standards, wireless standards. But for automation, I don't think those standards are really dealing with those issues. It seems to me that if you want to automate adaptation of your software in the future systems, you should be looking for some kind of software development standards, not really just 3GPP or ORAN. That's my understanding. Maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah, so that's an entirely possible outcome of this, right? That is well within the realm of possibilities, right? From what we are hearing, right, from industry, right, specifically from the MNOs, right, it is, let's just take something as basic as FCAPS data, right? And I'm an RU vendor, and I've got a piece of information that gets relayed back and forth with the core of the network that is related to FCAPS, whatever. Let's call it a fault signal, right? But I happen to call that fault signal 1A, while, Amanda Company RU supplier calls it fault 1B. Right. And so now, right, we have a situation where, because we're still talking about the same fault, right, but we're calling it two different things because we're two different companies, and that's just how it is. We grew up that way, always calling it that, and programming a path to it in that certain way. So all of that having been said, right, like integration at the end of the day unwinds those things, right? And it unwinds those things by saying, okay, Amanda calls it B, I call it A. We know that now, right? So we can write code to get past that, right? And we can establish processes via code to get past those types of things. That very well could evolve one focus on exchange of information between network. They're going to have a form of standards, but I don't see anything from a market perspective that would preclude a scenario exactly like what you just said, right? Which is, look, this just ends up being more of a library, for lack of a better term, that sits sort of outside the standards bodies.
Also, okay, I understand, but it's not just a library, I think, because this is also a process.
Yes,
So
absolutely.
So it's talking about some kind of processes that are more standardized, and standards help, and it's very good that you guys are require at least three vendors collaborate and so on, because that shows that components developed by one collaborate with the other. But now with automation, that if you want to my question is this, sorry. The question is, are you interested in this automation process to be very efficient economically, so that, and usually standards kind of support this kind, because if one guy follows the standard, the other guy follows the same standard, that's more likely they will be able to interoperate.
That's right.
Okay, right. But for automation, it's not so obvious which standards you should follow. So, for instance, at least one in the wireless area, there is SCA 4.1, for instance. That's a standard for waveforms, and some vendors of waveforms claim that they satisfy SCA 4.1. Some don't. Okay, there are some procurements that require to use SCA, but sometimes they don't even say it's 4.1. So it's kind of vague. There is another standard in the area which is called SOSA, Sensor Open Systems Architecture, MOSA, for instance. So the question is, it seems to me like those standards could be possibly useful here. Consider components developed by various vendors, systems, and now those systems consist of components. Now should you be able to use one component from one vendor and put into another's, or not? If to do that, you would have to go after standards which are, for instance, like SOSA, because that's what they're dealing with, building systems out of components. So it seems to me that if this is an issue, then all of a sudden vendors could start competing. They say, okay, I'll sell you this component, send that component, put this into the system, and there is a market, there's competition. That should drive the prices down. The government should be interested in this, I would think.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree with you, right? I mean, I think to the degree, look, you're exactly right. Until everything, right, falls under exactly consistent standards, right, that are super well defined, right, then what that means is there's going to be variability. And with that variability comes integration challenges, right? We would all love to fast forward. Well, at least I know I would. I think I speak for everybody here. We would all love to fast forward to a world, right, where everybody agrees. We've got a set of standards. Everybody plays by those standards. Like, but that's just not the world we're in here, right? And so what that means is we have variability. And as long as we have variability, we are going to have a requirement to do integration work to break down those barriers.
Okay, so that's what I'm saying, that the baseline may be a SOSA, could be, for instance, and then you have the variability around it, but not just. Yeah, I absolutely agree that there's no perfect standard and they're always evolving. Thank you.
Okay.